The chandeliers at Hartwell House dripped wax onto the shoulders of the great and the grasping, and Helena Cross stood exactly where her mother had placed her, behind a potted fern, half obscured by the velvet curtain, a living afterthought. 3 years earlier, a single unchecked laugh at a royal levee had crystallized her fate, not loud, not crude, simply present in a moment when silence was expected. The Tun never forgot a woman who drew attention without a title to protect her. From her shadowed corner she watched Lydia twirl through a quadrille, pink silk rustling, gentlemen's eyes following. Their mother, Mrs. Cross, stationed herself near Lady Jersey's circle, nodding with calculated deference. Helena's own gown, dove-gray crepe, whispered against the wall when she shifted, appropriate for a spinster of 26, which was how the world saw her now. She slipped through the French doors onto the terrace. Cool air carried the scent of damp stone and distant jasmine. Laughter and violins muffled to a hum. She pressed her palms to the balustrade and allowed herself one steadying breath. Voices drifted from an open window above the terrace, her mother's, unmistakable. Lydia must have the green silk tomorrow, and you will keep Helena occupied in the carriage when Lord Rydell calls. One wrong word from her and he'll bolt. Heaven knows we cannot afford another season of her ruining things. Helena's throat tightened, but her spine did not bend. She had learned, over years of tiny exiles, to fold humiliation into something harder, a protective shell worn beneath her clothes where no one could see it crack. Footsteps sounded on stone. She did not turn. The shape that stopped beside her was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in dark superfine and the particular scent of expensive tobacco, the Duke of Thornbury. "Hiding, miss." His voice was a drawl, bored, expecting no answer worth hearing. "Resting my ears, your grace. The orchestra is overloud and so is the company." She spoke without looking at him, tone as mild as cream. A pause. Men of his rank did not expect mildness paired with indifference. He shifted, placing his gloved hands on the balustrade, deliberately close. "I confess I find the entertainment thin. All these girls paraded like yearlings at Tattersall's. One wonders if any of them possess an unscripted thought." Helena finally angled her face toward him. Moonlight caught the architecture of her cheekbones, the unblinking steadiness of her gaze. "Perhaps they do, but they are trained to hide it, as you are trained to ignore them unless they are offered up by ambitious mamas. It is a convenient arrangement." His eyebrows lifted. Interest flickered behind the aristocratic mask. He was not accustomed to being dissected by a woman in a gray dress who ought to be simpering or silent. "And you? Are you not on offer?" "I am not." She stepped back from the railing. "I am the family cautionary tale. Good evening, your grace." She left him there, the breeze tugging at her hem, his eyes following her until the terrace doors closed. The Duke of Thornbury, who had dined with princes and dismissed duchesses, stood motionless for several heartbeats, trying to recall any debutante, any diamond, any woman who had spoken to him as though he were merely an interruption. He could not. Inside, a footman whispered her name to a companion, "Miss Helena Cross." The Duke filed it away, a thorn pressed into his consciousness, unwelcome and impossible to dislodge. Almac's assembly rooms held the peculiar chill of stringent propriety. The Duke of Thornbury had not intended to dance. He loathed the Wednesday squeeze, the watery lemonade, the bishop's breath of sanctimony that hung over the proceedings. But he had attended because he could not stop hearing a gray-gowned woman's voice in his head, and he despised obsession. He asked Lydia Cross to stand up with him first, a strategic feint. She was golden-haired, appropriately gigglish and safely boring. But as they moved through the figures, another gentleman jostled, wine splashed, and Lydia's slipper was stained. She withdrew with a little cry of distress, and the patronesses, fluttering, summoned Helena to replace her. A sister was unobjectionable. Helena took her place opposite the Duke with no visible pleasure. Her gown tonight was deep blue, a shade that made her skin luminous and her eyes unreadable. Their hands met. The music began. "You are surprisingly graceful," he said, turning her. Surprise requires low expectation. I cannot fault you there. She executed a perfect chassé. You enjoy rebuking me. I enjoy accuracy. The distinction is fine but important. He laughed, a short, surprised sound that drew glances. No one had heard the Duke laugh in public in memory. Helena's expression did not change. She navigated the remainder of the dance as though partnered with any country squire. When the final chord faded, he offered his arm. I shall escort you to your mother and request a second dance. No, I think not. She withdrew her hand from his sleeve before he could secure it. You have fulfilled your curiosity. My mother is at the far pillar, your grace. Good night. She walked away through the crowd, a straight-backed figure cutting through foam. Mrs. Cross, when reached, hissed, You refused him. Have you lost what little sense you possess? Helena said nothing. The Duke did not follow. He watched instead as a young man with spectacles and unpowdered hair approached Helena, Mr. Theo Ashby, a scholar of natural philosophy, undistinguished by blood but known for a brilliant essay on geological strata. He bowed. Helena smiled at him, a smile that reached her eyes, warm and unguarded. They stood together, speaking in low voices, their heads inclined. Thornbury felt his jaw tighten. The sensation was primitive, unwelcome. He had seen women covet his attention, manipulate for his favor. He had never witnessed one give away a smile he craved to a man of no consequence. It felt like a theft. Later, as the carriage queue formed, he waylaid her in a corridor while her family collected wraps. Miss Cross, I will call on you tomorrow. She regarded him with that unsettling calm. I have a prior engagement. Mr. Ashby is escorting me to the British Institution to view the new geological specimens. Break it. I shall not. If you truly wish to speak with me, you may leave your card and I will reply at my convenience. She inclined her head and joined her sister. The Duke stood in the drafty corridor, turned away by a woman the ton had discarded. The humiliation should have extinguished his interest. Instead, it sharpened into something dangerously close to resolve. He called anyway. The butler informed him Miss Cross was out with Mr. Ashby. The Duke left his card but not his composure. He repaired to his club and set his secretary to work. Within 2 days, a slim dossier landed on his desk. Miss Helena Cross, it turned out, was the anonymous author of a series of political pamphlets signed only as H.C. Sharp critiques of the Corn Laws, logic laid bare, prose as elegant as a fencer's lunge. Circulation was modest but fervent. Discovery would mean social ruin. He confronted her at Lady Milford's garden party, amid manicured hedges and the drone of polite chatter. He drew her aside near the ornamental pond, his voice low. You write seditious material under your own initials. Are you daring the world to catch you? Helena's color remained even. She did not blink, did not shrink. You have been investigating me. How flattering. This is not a jest. If anyone else learned this, they would see me ruined. Yes, do you intend to be that anyone? She folded her hands at her waist, serene as a martyr in a painting. Speak now, your grace. I will not beg. He stared. The threat had been in his voice. A man of his station held her entire future in his palm, and she dared him to close his fist. He found himself saying instead, Why do you do it? The question unsettled her slightly. He saw the flicker. She looked across the water where swans glided in indifferent pairs. Because my mind would starve otherwise. Society has no use for a woman's thoughts unless they flatter a man. I chose to feed myself. She met his eyes again. Now you have your answer. Expose me or leave me be. She turned and walked toward the tea pavilion. He did not expose her. He could not explain why, even to himself. 3 days later, the Morning Post scandal column ran a blind item about a certain family's unmarriageable elder daughter and her riotous indiscretion at court. The illusion was thin. By evening, callers at the Cross household dwindled. Mrs. Cross locked herself in her room with vinegar compresses. Lydia wept that her season was destroyed. Helena's father, a vague baronet, muttered about debts and reputations, and gave his elder daughter a look of tired blame. The Duke heard the whispers at White's. A viscount snickered. The cross chit, she's a deadweight, should have been shipped to a cottage years ago. Thornbury set down his glass with a click that silenced the table. I would advise you, he said, voice arctic, to speak of Miss Cross with the respect you would accord my own family. Any failure in this regard will be answered. The Viscount blanched. The story spread faster than the scandal itself. That evening, the Duke appeared at the Crosses' rented townhouse and requested a private audience with Helena. In the shabby-genteel drawing-room, under Mrs. Cross's stunned gaze, he said quietly, I could not let them savage you. Helena's expression was unreadable. I did not ask you to. I know, he exhaled. I find I cannot seem to stop myself where you are concerned. The words hung between them, raw and unpolished, a Duke unarmed. Helena did not soften. After he left, she stood at the window and watched his carriage depart into the misting rain. Pity, she thought, or wounded pride because she had not fallen at his feet. A man like Thornbury collected admiration as others collected snuff-boxes. Her refusal was an empty slot in his cabinet. She would not be a curio. Mr. Ashby called the next afternoon, damp from the weather, spectacles fogged. He sat opposite her in the faded parlor and spoke with endearing directness. You are being treated abominably. I have no title, but I have a competence, a cottage in Surrey, and a deep respect for your intellect. I know your secret. I deduced H.C. was you last winter from the style. I would never ask you to stop writing. Marry me, Helena. She saw the life he offered, quiet, safe, full of books and fossil hunting and mutual regard. It was more than she had ever been told to expect. She said she would consider, that she must speak with her father. Mr. Ashby pressed her hand and left her with a botanical print he had brought her, ferns, delicately engraved. That night the Duke arrived unannounced while the family was at supper. He bypassed the dining room entirely, having bullied the footman into admitting him through the garden entrance. He found Helena in the small back garden, wrapped in a shawl, looking at the stars. You accepted Ashby. His voice was rough. My decision is not your concern. She did not turn. It is. He seized her elbow, not hard but urgently, and she did turn then, her eyes flashing. You are not a possession to be fought over, she said, pulling free. You noticed me because I did not simper. That is novelty, not regard. You will tire of me the moment I become ordinary. You could never be ordinary. The words seemed torn from somewhere deep. Helena, I do not understand this myself. I have been arrogant, dismissive, blind. I admit it, but I am not toying with you. Then what do you offer? Her voice was very steady. A carte blanche, a discreet arrangement. I am a gentleman's daughter, not your mistress. He flinched. Marriage, I am offering marriage. Silence. Wind stirred the box hedges. Helena stared at him, searching for the lie. She did not find it, but she did not trust it either. You have only just learned my worth. I have lived with it all my life. I will not be your lesson in humility. She left him in the garden. The next morning, she informed her stunned mother that Mr. Ashby had offered, and she intended to accept, pending Sir Henry's consent. Mrs. Cross wept with relief that someone, anyone, would take her. The Duke did not return home that night. He walked the streets until dawn, his cravat undone, his mind a churn of chagrin, longing, and a terrifying new emotion he finally named as love. He sat at his desk as the sun rose and wrote a letter. The pen shook in his grip. He confessed everything: his pride, his fear of vulnerability, his realization that she was the first person he had ever met who demanded he become a better man, not for her sake but because her very existence made his old self feel insufficient. He did not send the letter. He kept it, folded against his chest, as he formulated a plan. The soiree at the Marquis of Fenwick's townhouse was the crush of the week. Crystal chandeliers blazed, mirrors multiplied the candle flame, and the air hummed with the scent of hothouse flowers and ambition. Helena arrived on Mr. Ashby's arm, her gown, a deep russet silk that few women could wear. She had given her father no final answer yet. Her heart was a battleground she kept hidden beneath a serene face. The Duke was present. He had been waiting. As Helena entered the main salon, conversation stuttered and recalibrated. The scandal had made her notorious, but the Duke's public defense had made her fascinating. She moved through the room like a ship through eddies, Mr. Ashby a steady dinghy beside her. Thornbury intercepted them near the grand fireplace. He bowed to Mr. Ashby with punctilious correctness, then addressed Helena. "Miss Cross, I must speak with you. What I have to say cannot wait, and it will not be private, because the matter concerns your public honor as much as my private heart." The room had not fallen silent, but a circle of listening had begun to condense around them. Lady Fenwick paused with her fan half open. Mrs. Cross, across the room, clutched Lydia's wrist so tightly the girl winced. Helena met the Duke's eyes. "Say it then." He did not hesitate. Slowly, in full view of the cream of London society, the Duke of Thornbury lowered himself to one knee on the polished parquet. Not in a proposal posture exactly. His hands were empty of a ring box and his head was bowed. A ripple of gasps spread outward like stones in a pond. Someone dropped a champagne glass. "Miss Cross," he said, his voice carrying to the far corners, "I have treated you with arrogance. I have underestimated you, pursued you as a curiosity, and wounded you with my pride. I kneel not to ask for your hand, I have not earned that right, but to beg your forgiveness publicly and to declare before all these witnesses that I love you. I love your mind, your courage, your unbreakable dignity. Whatever you decide, the world will know that I was the one found wanting, not you." The silence that followed was absolute. Lady Fenwick's fan dropped. Mrs. Cross looked as though she might expire. Mr. Ashby, to his credit, released Helena's arm gently and stepped back, giving her room. Helena looked down at the most powerful man in the room, bent before her like a penitent knight. Her heart pounded, but her voice emerged clear. "Rise, your grace. I will not have you kneeling while I speak." He rose, uncertain. "I will give you my answer, but not here, not as a performance. You will come to my home tomorrow, and we will speak privately with my chaperone present. If your contrition is genuine, you will accept those terms." He nodded, his throat working. "I accept." She inclined her head, then turned to Mr. Ashby. "Theo, I think I would like to go home now." He gave his arm, and they departed through a pathway that opened before them, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. The Duke stood alone before the fireplace, his knees still aching from the polished floor, his heart suspended in an agony of hope and terror. The ton would talk for weeks. He did not care. She had not said no. The Cross drawing-room the next day was tidied within an inch of its life. Mrs. Cross had wanted to be present. Helena had firmly insisted on only great Aunt Honoria, a deaf but sharp-eyed dowager who knitted in a corner. The Duke arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, hat in hand, the same letter he had written after his all-night vigil pressed inside his coat. Helena received him standing, not seated. She was mistress here. "I released Mr. Ashby from our understanding last night," she said without preamble. "I could not marry a good man when my heart was entangled elsewhere. That does not mean I have chosen you. It means I have chosen honesty." The Duke exhaled. "I understand. I have a letter. I wrote it before the soiree, before I knew I would kneel." He withdrew the folded sheets and held them out. "It contains what I should have said in the garden. Please read it." She took the letter but did not open it immediately. "You will answer my questions first. Why now? Why not a month ago when you saw me as a diversion?" "Because I was a coward," he admitted. "I had constructed a life where women were ornaments, attachment was weakness, and my own superiority was a shield. You cracked it, not with wiles, with your indifference. You did not need me. That terrified me. I pursued you because your refusal challenged my very self. But then I came to know you, your writings, your steel, your hidden warmth with Mr. Ashby, and I realized I did not merely want you to surrender. I wanted to be worthy of you. That is new. That is yours." Helena's fingers tightened on the letter. She heard no performance. She heard a man dissecting himself publicly without grace notes. Great Aunt Honoria's needles clicked. "If I let you court me," she said, "it will not be a grand campaign, no more public kneeling. You will meet me in my world, you will discuss my pamphlets, you will listen without correcting, you will defend my name without expecting gratitude. And you will understand that I may still refuse you. Can you bear that?" "Yes," he spoke the word like a vow. "Whatever time you need, whatever tests you set." She opened the letter. She read it in silence while he stood, a duke submitting to judgment. When she looked up, her eyes held a glitter that might have been tears, held back by sheer will. "You wrote this not knowing if you would ever send it." "I wrote it because it was true." She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her sleeve. "Then we begin." The weeks that followed were the hardest of Thornberry's life, and the most illuminating. He attended lectures with her at the Geological Society, where her questions were sharper than any fellows. He sat in the parlor while she read her latest draft aloud and offered critique only when asked. He bore her mother's sudden, cloying deference and her sister's bewildered glances. He invited Mr. Ashby to dinner and treated him as a respected rival, which earned Helena's quiet approval. When another scandal sheet attempted to revive the old story, the Duke bought the publication and shut it down, and when Helena discovered this, she admonished him for overreach, and he apologized. On a crisp autumn afternoon, he brought her a parcel. Inside was a slim volume bound in dark green leather with gold tooling. Essays on Commerce and Morality. By H.C. He had gathered her pamphlets and had them printed privately for her eyes alone. The inscription on the flyleaf read, "For a mind I cannot match, but adore." Helena traced the lettering with her fingertip. "You know I will publish publicly someday under my own name. The world may mock me." "The world," he said, "will learn that I married the most brilliant woman in England, and I will spend my life ensuring they never forget it." She looked up at him, and for the first time her smile was not guarded, not testing. It was simply glad. The engagement was announced at the final grand ball of the season. Helena wore emerald silk, the color of new growth, and stood beside the Duke of Thornbury as the ton buzzed. Her family clustered nearby, Mrs. Cross's face a study in triumph and disbelief. When Lady Sefton offered congratulations and remarked to Mrs. Cross, "You must be so proud of your daughter's catch," Helena spoke before her mother could. "My mother did not orchestrate this," she said, her tone pleasant but clear as a bell. "I chose him, and he chose me. The credit is ours." Mrs. Cross flushed, but the Duke's mouth curved in a smile of pure admiration. He lifted Helena's hand to his lips in full view of the room. Every word true. They married in the village church near Thornbury's country seat, not in St. George, with 500 guests. Helena wore a gown of ivory wool, practical and elegant, and carried a posy of rosemary and white heather. Lydia served as bridesmaid, tearful and genuinely happy. Mr. Ashby attended, seated in the third row, and later shook the Duke's hand with sincere warmth. The years that followed rewrote the narrative entirely. The Duchess of Thornbury became a noted essayist, her identity now open, her salon a gathering place for thinkers and reformers. The Duke funded schools on his estate and regularly consulted his wife on estate policy. Society columns which once mocked her now sought her opinion. One summer evening, 5 years after their wedding, they sat on the terrace of Thornbury Abbey. The hills rolled green and gold under a lowering sun. Helena held a sheaf of paper, a new essay on education reform she intended to publish. She read a passage aloud, her voice unhurried. The Duke listened with his eyes half closed, his hand resting lightly over hers on the chair arm. When she finished, he said, "The part about village teachers will enrage Lord Albright." "Excellent." She laughed, the same laugh that had once ruined her, now free. "You are biased." "I am converted." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "You brought me to my knees once. You have kept me on them every day since, in the best sense. Gratitude, reverence, love." Helena set aside the papers and turned to face him fully. The fading light caught the silver threads in his hair, the lines of laughter around his eyes that she had placed there. "I did not set out to conquer you, Julian." "I know," he leaned close. "That is precisely why you did." The sun sank lower, and the birds in the cedars fell silent. Two figures remained on the terrace, silhouetted against the dusk, a duke and his duchess who had overturned every rule and built something stronger in the wreckage. Not a fairy tale, but a partnership. And when they rose to go inside, her hand was tucked into the crook of his arm, and neither led, both moving together into the lamplight and the long, good years ahead.